Hi, my name is Rolf Aspag. I'm RTD's General Counsel, and I'm here today to talk to you about something really exciting for us at RTD. We finally have a code of ethics. Now wait a second, you might say, when I joined RTD, maybe long ago, I got a piece of paper shoved in front of me, which was a code of ethics, wasn't it? Haven't we always had a code of ethics? Well, yes, but until recently, what we had was a procurement code of ethics. It only applied to a very narrow set of RTD employees who were responsible for contracts, either creating contracts or managing contracts. For the vast majority of us, we just don't have that type of responsibility. Yet we were still asked to look at, sign for, and understand a code of ethics. Well, a couple of years ago, we at RTD decided that that didn't work. We needed to have a code of ethics that's more modern, that is similar to what they have in other organizations, and that applies to the entire spectrum of ethical issues that are facing modern organizations like RTD. So we did something that I think is really brilliant. Instead of having a lawyer like me write a new code of ethics, or have somebody up on the top of the chain write something, or a consultant, we went to our employees. Particularly, we went to 4 employees who were part of our Leadership Academy, 2 employees who were represented, and 2 who were salaried. And we asked those 4 employees to tear apart our old code of ethics and come up with something completely new. And that's exactly what they did. They worked very, very hard. They looked at codes of ethics throughout the organization, codes of ethics throughout the transit agency, throughout the transit industry, throughout other organizations, and they did a lot of research on what a modern code of ethics should look like. What they did is what you now have in front of you, RTD's new code of ethics, which has been approved by our board of directors 15-0. And that's an accomplishment, to get all 15 directors to agree to something, particularly when they're responsible under it as well. And that new code of ethics applies to every single one of us at RTD, from the chairman of the board to every single position at RTD. So what I'd like to do today is talk with you a little bit about what that new code of ethics involves. And it's not rocket science. It shouldn't be. A code of ethics contains the ethical values, the basic values that drive our organization. And what our code does is set forth 5 basic principles that we want every person involved with RTD to be responsible for, to be accountable for, and to work under. And let me tell you a little bit about what those 5 values are. So the first ethical value I want to talk with you about is integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing for the right reasons. And integrity really was the basic concept behind our old code of ethics that only applied to a narrow set of us. Now integrity governs all of us. So what does integrity mean? Well, let me give you some examples. I've been doing this for 30 years at RTD as a lawyer, and I've been talking a lot about behaving with integrity under our code of ethics. And one example that I give to people is lunches. Is it okay for somebody to accept a lunch from a vendor? Some people think you should never accept anything from a vendor, and that's fine. That's true. That definitely could work, and RTD perhaps should be paying for everything rather than have a vendor pay for something. But sometimes we work out arrangements where maybe we meet at their location for something and they pay for it, or they meet at our location and we pay for it. The long and short is, if you're in a contractual relationship with a vendor already and you're working with them on something, there's not a problem with having a working meeting over lunch, for example, and accepting a sandwich or a cup of coffee. The basic point is, nobody realistically expects anyone to be bribed by a sandwich or a cup of coffee. The problem that faces people is if they start saying, well, okay, a sandwich was okay, how about if we start having lunch at Morton's Steakhouse? Or how about if we have dinner? Or how about if we have lunches every single week that's sponsored by this vendor? Guess what? Everybody gets a free lunch from our favorite vendor. That's where we start running into problems, where it might look like to somebody from the outside that what's happening is you're getting a freebie to do favors for this vendor. So that's what we have to be on the guard for, to make sure that it just doesn't look that way, and certainly that it isn't that way. Another issue I sometimes get asked is it okay for me to go on a golf trip with a vendor? And it's really amazing how magically a lot of our vendors seem to have an extra opening on a golf foursome when they want something from us. Typically what we tell people in that situation is it's not okay unless you pay the fair market value for your spot on that golf foursome. And it's got to be on the up and up. It can't be a situation where I'm paying the book value, but in fact this is a golf course that you're never going to get into unless you happen to be friends with somebody who's already a member. So that's the kind of stuff that you're looking at in integrity. I typically ask people two questions about integrity when they come to me and ask, is it okay for me to accept something? Or is it okay for me to do something that's been offered to me by a vendor? The first question I ask is, how badly do you want it? If you want it badly, you shouldn't accept it. If you want it enough that badly, then you'll be wanting to do something in return for that. So if you feel that you want something, or it might look to the outside world as if this is something of value to you, don't accept it. The second thing I tell people is the Paula Woodward rule. Paula Woodward was an investigative reporter who liked nothing better than to take people who work for governmental agencies, put them in front of a microphone and ask them tough questions about, why did you accept these box seats to a Broncos game? Or why did you accept this fancy dinner? And it made them squirm, and it made them uncomfortable. And what I tell people is, imagine Paula Woodward asking you about what you've just been offered. And would you feel at all uncomfortable about that? Cup of coffee? Yeah, Paula, knock yourself out. Nobody's going to think that I am being bribed by a cup of coffee at a meeting. But you can imagine that there might be other things that people might offer you, sometimes with the best of intentions, but it ends up looking bad. The point with integrity is we need to be sure in our own minds, in our own hearts, and we need to be sure that it looks to the public as if what we're doing is for the right reasons, for RTD, not for us personally. That's what integrity really is all about. The next ethical value, honesty. Believe it or not, in its entire history, 50 years, RTD never had an ethical value listed in a document, a key document approved by our board that said, we will be honest. Honesty is an ethical value that we will follow. That's another part of having an important modern code of ethics. And we said that's got to be in there. Integrity, honesty. Honesty to ourselves, honesty to each other, honesty to the public we serve. That's really critically important, and we now have that enshrined as an ethical value. So that was honesty. Honesty is such an important value because you know what? Nobody is perfect. We aren't, nobody is. But we've got to be honest with each other when we make mistakes. If we try to hide things, that doesn't work. The next ethical value that's very important to us is inclusivity. Inclusivity, many of us might think about typically under the guise of equal employment, under not discriminating against people, but it's more than that. That's the most important thing, and RTD has a proud, rich history of being inclusive to people regardless of their race, their gender, their sex, their national origin, their sexual preference, their veteran status, and many other areas that are so important for us to treat each other equally. That makes us very, very strong. Inclusivity as an ethical value takes into account all of that, but it also goes beyond that. Inclusivity is a value that means we're not going to push people away from the table of ideas if we disagree with them on something. There might be somebody standing right next to me who looks exactly like me, who comes from the same background, but he and I, or she and I, may differ in our opinions on something. Being inclusive means welcoming differences of opinion, debating them, talking them out, and coming up with the right reasons for doing something, because that makes us stronger as an organization. The next ethical principle, transparency. That's a new one for RTD, and it doesn't immediately come to mind as an ethical value like maybe honesty or integrity does. But we are a public agency. We're taxpayer funded. It's important for us to be transparent about our operations. The public deserves to know what we do. They deserve to know why we do it. There might be a few areas where we need to be careful with what we release. social security numbers, credit card numbers, safety-sensitive information. But the vast majority of what we do, the vast majority of what we write, the documents we put out, the rules we work under, are and should be open to the public. But transparency as an ethical value goes beyond what we provide to the public. It also goes beyond what we provide to the taxpayers, to other organizations. It involves being transparent with each other. We need to be completely open to each other as to what we're doing. It's different than honesty. Honesty means we're telling the truth. Being transparent means that we are open in showing what it is we're doing. And transparency as a value is why it's so important for us now to embrace new principles where we are getting away from the old silos of information that we had in the past and coming to a new era of working together where we can collaborate together by having things, for example, made into electronic files that can be easily shared and viewed by each other as opposed to paper stuffed in an office or a shelf somewhere. So that's transparency, and that's an important ethical value. The last ethical principle, sustainability. That too is a somewhat new concept, but think about it for a second. As a transit agency, being sustainable is really what we're all about. That's what we should be about. And we want to promote sustainable modes of transportation. We want to conserve the assets that are given to us. We want to conserve the money that is given to us. And we want to make sure that we protect and preserve the environment, because that really is a major reason RTD is in existence. Now, what I've been telling supervisors and managers is, we don't go out and if you see somebody idling a bus, for example, too long, you don't go to that operator and say, you're violating the RTD Code of Ethics, you're not being sustainable. That is not what a Code of Ethics is about. A Code of Ethics is supposed to be about what it is that guides us in a general sense. In a specific sense, it's really on the managers and the supervisors to come up with good, solid, easy to understand rules that impart those principles. And for example, in sustainability, we would want to come up with rules that, for example, say, don't just print out things on one side of a sheet of paper. Use both sides of the sheet of paper. Don't idle a bus more than 3 minutes unless you have specific exceptions that allow you to do that. Those are the kind of common sense rules that managers and supervisors are responsible for coming up with to help everybody follow the ethical value of sustainability. So that's our new Code of Ethics in a nutshell. Integrity, honesty, inclusivity, transparency, and sustainability. Those 5 ethical values are at the heart of what we are at RTD. Now, I've told you some things to keep in mind. I'd like everybody to take a look at the Code of Ethics, to read it carefully. I'd like everybody to take a look at the procedures we have online. But as I said before, this isn't rocket science. And if you have any questions, or if you have any suggestions on how we can improve anything we've given, be it this video, be it other areas where we teach about the Code of Ethics, be it the procedures, be it the Code of Ethics itself, come to us, offer us suggestions for improvement. We will honestly listen. We will be inclusive in listening. We will be transparent in what we do, and we'll come up with the best solutions for RTD. And if we all work together with our Code of Ethics, we'll be a much stronger organization. In closing, thanks to each and every one of you looking at this video for what you do for RTD, for our customers, and for the public we serve.
Quickly, I said,